Okay, good morning. I'm still having my coffee. I'm going to talk about the new stewards. New stewards. Now, we need to talk about the new remaking of the stewards. So, we're going to deal with some serious history here that I don't think some people understand. Now, there's a lot of stuff we have to deal with because the original creation of the nation was complicated. We're in Constitution number 5. So when you're going through various types of documents and fragments and mentionings of meetings that different people had, talking about how to form government before we had the government that we know today, before we had the Constitution of the United States. When people got into rooms and says, hey, this thing with the British isn't working out, and we need to do something. And keep in mind, a lot of us may have been at that time actually British. In other words, people came from Britain and whatnot, and they thought there was a certain type of a deal going. Turns out the deal would keep changing. People would come in, they would make appraisals on real estate that we would develop. We did all the work. We put out basically all the money. And all of a sudden they're going to appraise it and justify the printing of notes. They're going to sit there and do a series of fancy stacks and paperwork, but let me reduce it down for you. You could sit there and say, oh, it's based on a tax base of an area and this and that. Well, in order to understand what you can tax, first you have to understand what's there, right? In other words, you can't tax a turnip if it ain't got nothing to give, right? I guess that's the theory, right? Of course, today in California, you wouldn't know that. We got genocide all over the place. But, people overlapping taxes hitting certain people, and they're harder hit. And it's beyond just saying they can't survive. You got people in the 400% tax bracket. No matter how much they make, they're being told that that's not enough money. You haven't paid us enough money. Oh, now we're deciding you're a criminal. On and on and on. It's insane. It's literally taxing people to death. So, in the early days, before the constitutions, again, we got 5 of them. There's actually a rumor that there was actually far more versions than that. We'll get into that another time. But how that worked out. Anyhow, so, basically the British, and keep in mind a lot of us actually still were British, they were doing dumb deals. So in order to understand how much they could tax people and come up with these fancy new labels of telling people, okay, well, we're going to create a series of understanding of potential revenue, and that's what we're going to borrow money against or print notes or certificates against. And then we're going to negotiate with those, with other people saying, oh, well, we can do this. So therefore, you can either loan us money or justify the existence of this note. Say, the ultimate is making currency itself. So in other words, the currency is a promissory note. Is basically what currency is, equivalent. And people are missing part of it. But anyhow, but in order to understand how much you can tax people, you have to understand how much they got. Well, one of the ways they did this was basically appraise what you got. Let's appraise your land. Let's appraise all this stuff. And they go, okay, well, we're going to figure out how to do taxes on this. Well, there's another system that people don't want to realize. And that's to say that you might have heard people say that you don't own your land, you don't own your building or anything like that. The system is, if you create an asset has a value. An asset can be used as a lever, as a loan. So if you make an asset, it didn't exist before. It's justification to print currency, actually. So you can come up with a lot of fancy ways in saying tax base, this, that, and equate. But into all of that equation is an ultimate simple understanding is encompassed into that. It's very simple. They appraise your property, and they're going to print notes. based upon what your property is, what your assets are, because they're considered longevious or semi-longevious. So they would do this. The British would do this, and then they would use those notes to buy goods. It's the way they did it. And they'd go buy a bunch of goods. They'd go sell them all over the world, and they'd convert them into coin. They were really big about it. They'd convert them into silver, to gold when possible, and into copper, brass, bronze, coins. And there's a thing on the exchange. If you said, oh, at the end of the auction or the sale, you want gold. Oh, well, yeah, well, there's a percentage cut if you want all gold. And it was different. The percentage cut for money changing cut was different. Now, a lot of times, if you said you were willing to take copper, they would give you 1-to-1. They say, yeah, we got a lot of copper. We'll give you copper. We can weigh that up and give it to you by the pound. We'll fill up the shovel pennies in there, So today they would tell you it's a lot of extra labor. To work with copper, we're now going to charge you. We're going to charge you because of the labor involved. Isn't that a new twist? It's money. It's money, see. And it used to be that there was no charge on copper and the handling of copper. There was a charge on converting the coins. So what everybody wanted to do was they wanted to convert these big, huge, large bags of pennies into silver or gold so they could keep it in a smaller bag and carry it. Yeah, I want gold. Yeah. Do you want that pickup truck load of pennies, or would you rather have a gold coin? There's a lot of people say, yeah, I'd rather have the gold coin, Okay, so something like that. Okay, so that's the way we're anyhow. So they would drag back all of this coin and put it in their treasury. So you'd have these buildings full of bags and containers full of coins. So if you need to take somebody on a tour, you go, well, this is our treasury. Look, we have lots of liquid here. We got silver. Big thing was silver. The British pound of silver. Silver. So what it ends up happening is they did this. They got the note justification. They sold the products. They turned it into coin. They dragged it back to their treasury. But they weren't sharing the love back with us. People saying, hey, these people are making bank. They're making big bucks on us. Big bucks. Where's our cut? They're not even bringing the money back in and spending it to help our infrastructure. We got needs here. We got to deal with water problems. We really need some more work on some roads, some people to drag some trees and make some roads. Need some stuff cut down. We need some other services, etc. They weren't doing it. So they had the audacity to eventually say, well, you are lazy colonists, and we're just going to have to tax you even more. Boston Tea Party, we remember that. Okay, so what we need to get straight here is the understanding that there's an ultra-simplistic understanding respective to the real simplified understanding. You build something, it didn't exist before. You basically own it. It's yours. So the government is going to say, well, we're going to claim the security control of the area. The security control of the area. So therefore, we're using that as justification to say, look, on this map, we control all this area. Within this map, here's a list of all the assets. And therefore, we control the treasury. So our forefather says, no, we want to build our own treasury. We're going to cut the British out straight out. We're cutting them out. That was the big deal of the revolution. Most people don't understand. Cutting the British out. So we need to reinvent today our own steward organizations, because we endowed ourselves with power. And this is something that you have a problem because you have federal government trying to say that they are ultimately all powerful. And then you have people, oh, well, yeah, there's states' rights and this. They're let me get this out there where people can understand. Okay, about states' rights. States' rights were still a different understanding. State rights were based upon the collective of us stewards. And it's us stewards that maintain the rights to having militia, security forces. And it's the collection of us stewards deciding we want to make a treasury. That went haywire, by the way. There's a bunch of all kinds of historical stuff on that. It went haywire. They ended up having problems with who's doing what, when, and where. And they ended up ultimately making the Fed. Okay, still not working right. We're still being cheated because we have individual steward rights. That is to say that you go to the Treasury. See, the idea was we create a Treasury. You go down to the Treasury and you say, look, we got real estate right here. And we have all this. So therefore, we have the right to justify printing notes. You had a whole lot of people that made notes based upon assets. And then they ran around doing things with the notes. And, that was popular to some people because you're basically having a collective being run through a bank collective where your personal notes are certain amounts of justification. And if you fail, then the bank would have to get together and say, okay, look, there's a problem. There were other problems, like you're making all these notes up. You're printing all these notes and we can't trace them. There's no way to verify how many of them there are. So there were problems. There were some problems. Now that used to be fairly easy to begin with because there was only a certain number of notes. And a lot of times they would think they could do it at a bank or whatever. But, all these different evolvings of things that happened. Now we have, ways we can do stuff with blockchain. Now we have all kinds of neat new options. So it's crucially important to understand the basic process. If we reduce the cogs down to the most basic process, it's very simple. If you make an asset or you have an asset, that asset can have notes printed against it. So we did the broad scope for a while, which is the overall, essentially nationwide, but it was broke down by states and areas to say that all these new assets that keep getting built have to be appraised. We appraise them. We can use it for the justification of printing of notes. Worked very well for the British. One of these days I'm going to get back into this material. I don't know how much still might survive someplace on the web where I talk about what our forefathers did throughout the Revolution and how all of a sudden we brought our nation to having 50% of the shipping, of the ships, of the entire world coming to the United States. This was like an incredibly big deal. I'm serious. People did not understand how that worked because it was a really big deal. Because it's a brilliance. It's a brilliance. It's solid. It's solidity. And we pulled it off. And I'll get into that. I might talk a little bit about that today, of how we did it, because it flipped the British out. They just flipped out. We made the Republic, and then the Republic is also an East Indies company. In other words, to promote our financial welfare in a specialized ongoing event system, a fairgrounds type system. A fair, you go to a fair, you have fun. Well, you combine financial wellness with fairgrounds and you come up with welfare. That's the real meaning of welfare. I don't care what anybody's trying to tell you. It's not about food stamps. It's about creating a financial environment where people can succeed. So Now we have a haywire system that's cheating people. So we need to recreate the Stewart system. And there's a lot more to the Stewart system than people realize. The Stewarts had different associations, different clubs, they did different meetings. There's still technically some in existence, but for the most part, it's as though they faded away. It's like you have some secret organizations here and there of Stewarts and whatnot. But there's something that has faded away in many ways. People took it for granted that we would be able to have the federal government that we created to remove part of the burdens from us, was going to end up taking care of things, and it failed. It failed. It has not been taking care of the burdens for us because our original rights were never surrendered. Stewards have a right to militia. Militias need disciplining. That means you need courts. Militias and courts go together. And I don't mean the localized courthouse. I mean the court that you control. Now, the problem is people, for a while, were accused of mismanaging things and not running things to a proper protocol. There were some problems. There were some rule changes, except your rights to run a courthouse have never been taken away. And these people that keep trying to say that you can't do that are evil. They're liars. Now, what is it that you can't do? Okay, what you can't do is run a kangaroo court. See, if you run a court and you run it the wrong way, then you're going to be in violation of the way you managed it. In other words, if you start kidnapping people and falsely accusing them and then convicting them falsely, you're doing bad stuff. That's actionable. But if you're going to arrest people for the right thing and say, okay, look, you committed these crimes and nobody wants to prosecute you, so we're going to do it. You can do that. This is part of the problem with the federal government. You have private ADR, private courts all over the country that are new businesses. You've got all kinds of different private stuff that's been created. The part of the problem that we have now is that the federal government has stepped in to make too many rules and regulations. And this is where we have to remove ridiculously dumb rules and regulations and charges. See, the big thing is they're creating a caste system by creating a set of tiers, false tiers. Sometimes you have to have tiers to separate and manage things, to understand where it sits. But you cannot decide to make caste systems. And that's what's happening with governments all over the country. They're making caste systems, and a lot of people are like, but it makes me feel comfortable. I just need to tell people, sit down, calm down, remain calm. You're getting deceived. And I'm going to tell you why you're getting deceived, because you got people doing it the wrong way. There's nothing wrong with feeling comfortable. There's nothing wrong with exerting Stewart pressures when needed. There's nothing wrong with that. What's wrong with it is how people have ended up interpreting different stuff, because we have people that are bringing in occupational European instrument law. Occupational European instrument law. I don't know if you understand what that is. That's things where you go into regions and you tax people falsely and you invent a bunch of permits. You basically destroy people's lives. You look at the maximum amount of money available and you just start charging everybody against everything they got. Bang, fee for this. Oh, you own this? Oh, well, you have to pay this fee because you own this. You got a lot of people say, yeah, but I used everything I got to get that. I don't have anything extra. Oh, we're so sorry. We're going to have to seize that and take it away for failure to pay. It's occupational governance designs. They're European instruments. They're made by the Royal German Empire. They're designed to destabilize populations, to rape and destabilize. They're a control mechanism. And this is something that diabolically opposes the entire concept of colonial constitutional capitalism, because colonial constitutional capitalism is a big, heavy, weighted item based upon making new assets. Assets are what's king. See, for the most part, it used to be people didn't really want currency. They didn't necessarily care for currency. And people go, you mean paper? I says, no, they didn't necessarily care for even coin. They wanted what you could buy with it. Things, what did you need? I want a nice rifle. Yeah. Oh, you make that? I want that. Whatever it was. People wanted what you could get with it. That's what people actually wanted. Currency is only a mechanism of exchange to facilitate trade. People don't understand this. It's not necessarily properly taught in schools. Now, in order to have the ultimate trust, some people would trust in a paper note, a promissory note. And other people go, man, that's just paper. We have no idea whether that's going to be good. So the bigger things get, the more chances there are. So this is where you have to deal with all of these different factors. And I'm bringing this heavy history into this because I want people to completely understand when we get into certain levels of physics about pretty much exactly what I'm talking about. I want people to clearly understand, because this is American history, and it's crucial because we have a huge haywire system, and there's a bunch of evidence. There's a bunch of people who design stuff to be diabolically opposing colonial constitutional capitalism because they wanted to destroy us. The Royal German Empire, for instance, fought 2 great wars with them. They created the corporate nonprofit, the organization, the child organizations. They're the parent child organizations. Those would be Marxism, communism, socialism, etc. All these different organizations. By the way, there's lots of them. Then they created all oligarchic shells. We'll talk about oligarchic shells sometimes on how those work. And those are like they're like ultra rich cogs, super middle, all different classes. But I'll talk about that, how that works. So they wanted to do a master puppeting scheme. And basically they wanted to have mechanisms and ways to manage stuff for the purpose of destabilization. They wanted to destabilize Russia. So they came up with a whole design matrix. When they gave that, well, today it'd be like $4.5 billion, $5 billion, gave it to Lenin and says, okay, we're going to send 3,700 black ops guys to Ghost. You're going to have your people. You're going to be running these people. Oh, here's a rule set. This is how you run it. This is how you manage these people. Here's your extra problem book, how to deal with things. Here's your extra special communication books, these other books. You don't show those to anybody. This is management. This is interior management stuff. Okay, but so here's all these rules and designs, and people don't understand how it works. So when you're talking about foreign instrument types of occupational government management, this is what we're seeing manifest in our society today. These are things that were designed to be weapons of mass destruction. They're weapons, demographic attack weapons. People are not getting this, they're not understanding. So when you have them using these super taxation items, for instance, these diabolically oppose the colonial constitutional capitalist viewpoint. This is why when we fought our revolution, no, we're not going to have taxes. Why? You do not need taxes. You don't need any taxes at all. Because the engine design system of the core of operating everything is supposed to run based upon new asset development to the ratio of notes created. And the way this works is our forefathers started doing the same thing the British did. East Indies Company style stuff. Okay, our republic, okay, great. We're going to run around appraising all the new types of assets, Great, now we have numbers. Then they're going to go in and say, okay, we can talk about tax base, but first of all, what we're going to talk about is these are the assets. We're going to do a balanced thing here. We're going to print 70 cents on the dollar. The British printed basically 50 cents on the dollar. So we decided to say, no, we're going to print 70 cents on the dollar, and our word's good on that. We're going to back that. Our word's good on that. So they were making special federal notes. So they would go down to the docks and say, hey, where's all the captains at? Oh, there's some here, but most of them are over there at the bar. Oh, okay, well, most of them are at the tavern. Okay, thank you. So, basically they're going to move along, and guy walks up and says, Stewart, yes, here you go. Here's your list of all the latest appraisals of assets and the justification of notes, and here's a product list of all the people who have businesses and products available, as well as your estimates as to all the people who could be expanded into building new business, making furniture companies, something. So they go, oh, well, thank you. So now they're going to go in and sit down and be going through these different books and notes. They're going to go in and talk to the captains at the tavern. And they got a couple guys who say, yeah, go get some of those guys, bring them over here and talk to me. And they just keep rotating, doing this all day long. And the captains would come in, and the captain would go, well, what do you want to talk about? I says, well, let me tell you what I want to talk about. We have a whole lot of product. And the deal is, we want your services. We want to lease your ship for the next 3 years to be exclusively carrying cargo for us. But I already have contracts, and will they run out, don't they? Well, yes, but, so, well, look, sit down. Let me buy you a drink. Let me tell you what I'm proposing right away. I will pay you twice your captain's going rate to sign up with us. Now you got captains sitting down and their eyes are bulging out. They're like, what? You're going to pay us twice. This is how our forefathers ended up getting a situation where half the ships in the world were coming to the United States. This is how it was done. So what I'm conveying to you right now is the actions of brilliant stewards. This is what they did. So this goes on. They go to the docks, they run around, they get to certain points, they go, okay, we're going to go down, Captain, we're going to see your ship. I'm going to bring 1 to 3 experts, and some of them are going to travel with you. You're going to have a purser traveling with you. They'll have documents and help control the purses. That's the money. The money. Okay. So basically, some people change what the pursers do. They carry things and different stuff. But sometimes the pursers were basically the guys with the bags of money. They were controlling the goods and the paperwork. Okay. So down to the docks. We're down at the docks. We're talking with the captain. The guy says, I see you have a whole lot of cannon here. And the guy's, yeah, you got good shape. Yeah. I'll tell you what, I'll make you a deal. How much are new cannons right now? You can get new cannons, right? Oh, yeah, I could get new cannons. Well, yeah. He says, well, I see you want new cannons. We can't get you new cannons. The British have you under sanctions. He's like, well, yeah, I know that. But look, I'll tell you what. I'll pay you twice the going rate of what will cost you to buy brand new cannons for your used cannons today. And the captain's, well, I can't do that. Well, see, these 3 gentlemen right here will be traveling with you. And as you can see right here, the guy will snap his fingers. The guy brings out this paperwork and says, as you can see here, sir, they witnessed that when your crew was on R&R, that basically the pirates jumped into your ship and stole your cannons, and you're a victim. And they're here to travel with you and be your witness. Come on. You can do this one time, right? Just one time. Let's go ahead and do it, right? The captain says, okay, I guess I can do it once. So we were buying cannons for twice the going rate of new cannons for used cannons.